Backing out at the last minute, huh? So everyone is scratching their heads wondering, what's going on here? What exactly happened? Why? Why, oh, why? Who can explain this clearly? This is the first topic we're going to discuss today. The second topic is that Trump just left Beijing. Right after Trump left Beijing, Putin arrived. What is Putin's purpose in coming to Beijing? Is it important? This reflects how the entire global landscape might change. Also, today is a special day. Today is Tuesday, and it's the primary election day in 6 U.S. states. Of course, among these 6 states, the Republican primaries are especially intense. You could say there's a lot to watch today. Trump is going head-to-head with Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie. Basically, it's almost like a duel with swords drawn. So, who exactly is Thomas Massie, and what does it mean that Trump is challenging him one-on-one? This is a classic American political drama. Can a powerful outsider overpower the local boss? So it's a really interesting piece of news. All right, welcome to Good Morning America, brought to you by Feng Wei. Hello to all our YouTube viewers, and greetings to listeners of Sound of Hope, Silicon Valley FM 96.1. If this is your first time tuning in to Feng Wei Time, please go ahead and like and subscribe right now. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so whenever we update the show, you'll be the first to know. That's right, important news and in-depth analysis, all at your fingertips. If you've been with us for a while, our loyal friends, we also welcome you to like, comment, and share the show with more Chinese friends who care about major events in the US and around the world. Let's work together to uncover the real logic and direction behind the news in these chaotic times. But I also know, if you don't have a YouTube account, if you haven't registered one, then you won't be able to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, or even leave comments like I just mentioned. So a lot of my viewers are actually a bit older and really don't know how to do these things. So what should we do? If you don't know how, you can't leave comments either. So I'm thinking about how to solve this problem because subscribing really is a benefit and a convenience for everyone. How should I put it? If you can do it, go ahead and give it a try. If you can't, I'll figure something out. All right, let's talk about it. The first news item is called Trump calls off strike on Iran at the last minute. What's the reason? That's a big question mark. So on Monday, President Trump posted on his social media platform, Truth Social, saying that the King of Qatar, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and the President of the UAE have all asked him to hold off on the military strike against Iran that was originally planned for Tuesday because serious negotiations are currently underway. As great leaders and allies, they believe that an agreement can be reached that everyone can accept. Out of respect for the leaders mentioned above, I have only instructed the Secretary of the Navy, the Secretary of Defense, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. General Kane and the U.S. military have said that we will not launch an attack on Iran tomorrow, which is actually today. However, I have also further instructed them to be fully prepared to launch a comprehensive, large-scale attack on Iran immediately if an acceptable agreement cannot be reached. Then Trump went on to say at the press conference that the strike would be postponed for 2 to 3 days. This is the 5th time since the Iran conflict began that Trump has threatened to launch an attack, but ended up either not attacking on schedule or canceling it at the last minute. So Trump's critics say that since the Iran conflict began, this is the 5th time Trump has cried wolf. So this is just like crying wolf over and over. What he says doesn't count. That's one kind of commentary. Another kind of commentary says, Trump is deliberately mixing truth with falsehood, making it impossible for others to figure him out. What does he really want to do? Will he actually do anything? So let's do a quick poll here. I counted and checked, and it's true. Since the Iran conflict, this is the 5th time Trump has said something but not followed through. So is Trump just crying wolf with nothing to back it up? Or is he intentionally blending truth and falsehood, making things ambiguous? Let's do a poll, okay? If you think it's the first option, that he's just crying wolf, type 1. If you think this is part of Trump's strategy, type 2, okay? Let's take a look. All right, then. I'll just go ahead and share my opinion. I think it's the second option. I believe it's number 2, not because I oppose Trump no matter what. That's not it. Let me explain my reasoning to everyone. First of all, if Trump says he's going to take action and then doesn't, you might conclude that it's just another case of crying wolf, that he says he'll do something but doesn't actually follow through. If you don't take precautions and you miscalculate, the consequences could be very serious. So actually, no matter what he says, as long as Trump says he's going to strike, the other side, Iran, will definitely be extremely nervous. But then, how does Trump talk about it? How does he handle it? What about the crying wolf effect? Looking at his last 5 pullbacks, patterns emerge. First, he always retreats at the very last moment of his ultimatum, right at the deadline. He waits for peak pressure to pivot. That's the first point. Second, he always provides a specific reason for shifting. It's never for no reason. It's never without a sound. Like after the deadline passes, there's just nothing. There's always a reason. Either someone is mediating or the talks with Iran are going really well. In short, while he always has a reason for changing his mind, every time he emphasizes that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons because nuclear weapons are Trump's consistent red line. Yeah, this principle doesn't change. And just now, right after he changed his stance yesterday, the White House spokesperson Kelly said that President Trump has made it clear that Iran must hand over its enriched uranium. Trump isn't bluffing. So even as he keeps changing his approach, he always sticks to his basic position and emphasizes it every time. That just shows that his stance hasn't changed. So you could say the big picture bottom line hasn't changed, the principle hasn't changed. What changes are just the tactics, not the overall strategy. The third point is that every time he pulls back, it's always accompanied by the military being on standby, ready to strike at any moment. If the talks don't go well, they'll strike right away. He always makes that prediction. So no matter how you look at it, you could say that Trump, he's already gone back on his word 5 times, but let me give you a few more examples. During the war in Venezuela, Trump made 2 promises. First, he said, if you keep trafficking drugs, I'll sink your ships. And after he said it, he actually did it. He struck 57 times. Every single time, he kept his word. Now, if we count all those times he kept his word as just one instance, the second promise was that he said he was going to capture Maduro. He said, if you keep this up, we'll come in and arrest you. Maduro pounded his chest and said, if you're coming, then come. Don't just talk about it. And then bam, they went in and took him away. So in Venezuela's case, there was no empty talk. He said it twice and did it twice. So what about Iran? There have been 3 warnings, right? The first was in June last year, called Operation Midnight Hammer, remember? They said they would strike your nuclear facilities, and they did, launched from the US using B-2 bombers, flying all the way to Iran for a long-range strike. They bombed 3 of their nuclear facilities. That was the first incident. The second was on February 28th, right before the strike on Iran this time. Again, they said they would take action, and they did. The third was that recent incident with the so-called Wednesday fleet. Trump said, we're going to strike the Wednesday fleet, and when he said it, he meant it. There was no hesitation at all. Since the Wednesday fleet strike, few dare to venture out. Groups dropped from 30 ships to just 5. That fleet is basically a swarm of boats, like mosquitoes, hence the name Mosquito Fleet. The Mosquito Fleet, if you don't have enough of those mosquito boats, then it's not really a swarm, and their strategy just doesn't work. But now they've really been scared off by the attacks. If 20 or 30 of them came out together to swarm and attack an American destroyer, they'd be facing the risk of all 20 or 30 getting wiped out at once. So now, Iran only sends out 5 or 6, or sometimes just 4 or 5 of these boats at a time, and even then, they all end up getting sunk. So when it comes to Operation Midnight Hammer on February 28th and attacking the Mosquito Fleet, it's just like I said. If I say attack, then we attack. There's no such thing as saying something and not following through. So what's the whole picture now? The whole picture is that Trump said he'd do something 5 times and didn't, but there were another 5 times where he did exactly what he said. So what do you do with that? How do you draw a conclusion? Does Trump mean what he says or not? This is the real fake paradox. You can't conclude anything because with Trump, his words may or may not matter. What are his opponents supposed to do when you just can't pin him down? So why didn't his words count this time? People are guessing, but few are right. Trump said Tuesday he'd attack Iran, then tweeted it was because others mediated. Those high-profile mediators were clearly identified: the King of Qatar, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and the President of the UAE, all with their full names and titles. Yeah. He said those 3 were going to help with peace talks. How exactly are those 3 going to help with peace talks? The distance between the US and Iran, the gap between their positions, is like, let me give you an example. In the Midwest, there's the Grand Canyon, right? The Colorado Grand Canyon, and that canyon is a mile wide. That's how wide the gap is. That's how big the gap is between the US and Iran's positions. It's just like the Grand Canyon in Colorado. Qatar and Iran, Qatar and what? The UAE and Saudi Arabia? How could they possibly help close that gap? There's just no way to make it any smaller. But then why did Trump publicly mention those three by name? One possibility is that before taking action, Trump wanted to make it clear to the world and to Iran that those three not only weren't involved, they were actually trying to mediate. They told me so. They told me that what I do with Iran has nothing to do with them. So Iran, don't go blaming others for helping the Gulf states. This way, after the fighting starts, Iran won't just lash out at everyone indiscriminately. Of course, if my explanation is correct, let me first talk about what might happen next. So this is one possible purpose. What's another purpose? It's to scare Iran. Because if everyone suddenly says they're not going to fight, and then I say I could strike at any time, wouldn't that make Iran nervous? Wouldn't they want to hurry up and seek peace at this point? It's possible. Knowing Trump, he might try this, but I doubt he can pull it off. It won't work, because Iran won't negotiate for peace. As I've said, Iran believes standing firm against the U.S. is to their advantage. They think they can outlast U.S. pressure. All right, so someone asked, haven't Saudi Arabia and the UAE been urging the U.S. to keep fighting? Why would they suddenly want to do this, urge the U.S. not to fight? Well, that's true. Based on the information I have, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar, I'm not sure about Saudi Arabia, but the UAE definitely is. They've been urging the U.S. to fight to the end. Since they've already started, they want to see it through. But of course, they don't say this openly because they're also afraid of retaliation. But then... Even so, their tactic of distancing themselves from responsibility when talking to Trump doesn't actually conflict with this. While they do support Trump in fighting to the end, they also don't want to just stand by and end up getting dragged in by Iran. Like, Zhongshan hits Iran, then Iran hits Laisi, that kind of thing. So the U.S. attacks Iran, and then Iran retaliates against the Gulf countries. They don't want that kind of thing to happen, right? They want both things at once, and there's really no conflict there. But here's the issue. Trump posted that tweet, so will Iran, because of that tweet, hey, will they just not attack the Gulf countries because of it? What do y'all think? Definitely not, because Iran's strategy is to throw the whole world into chaos, to increase political pressure on the U.S., to put more political pressure on Trump. But then what's the point of Trump posting that tweet? Why delay it? Why postpone it for 2 or 3 days? Because by doing this, it would make Iran look especially morally defeated. This is a political win. Why? Because everyone can see that Iran is acting like a rogue, not just watching. The Gulf countries are just standing by and watching, not getting involved. But not only do you have to watch, you have to fight. Not just fight those standing by and watching, but also those who step in to mediate. He's basically treating these 3 countries as mediators, isn't he? The law that was introduced spells it out so clearly, right? That means they don't want me to attack Iran, but in the future, you'll still have to fight them. So for Iran, this puts them in a particularly morally defeated position. At the same time, Iran has already said that it plans to confiscate and charge protection fees for undersea cables that have nothing to do with them. Isn't this completely and utterly a gangster thug move? So what if someone like this, a thug, has nuclear weapons? What would he do? Would he use them? First, he's capable of dumping oil into the ocean just to protect his own oil wells. He can do things like that. Second, he can seize cables that other people have laid, cables that have absolutely nothing to do with him, and still try to take them over. Third, you can even block off something created by nature that has nothing to do with you. It's just that you happen to be on the northern coast. You block off a strait made by nature. Fourth, not only do you attack those who have nothing to do with you, you even go after the ones trying to break up the fight. So what kind of person does that make you? Doing this just means Iran is squandering whatever international credibility it has left. All right, so in short, if my guess is right, then Trump really will start a war soon, because he already tweeted about it. After clearing the Gulf countries of responsibility, he'll just go on doing whatever he wants, right? So it's really possible that the war could start this week or even in the next few days. So let's just wait and see. All right, today the U.S. Treasury Department issued a so-called temporary general license that's valid for 30 days. Because the U.S. has been sanctioning Iran's oil. Oh, sorry, I meant Russia's oil. So, as a result, this general license allows countries facing energy shortages to purchase Russian crude oil that's been stuck at sea. Okay, so what effect does this have? Basically, it means that Russian crude oil still moving at sea can be sold at international market prices without having to give the Chinese Communist Party a discount. Okay, and because of the sanctions on Russia, one of the rules is that Russian oil can't be sold above a certain price. So, what's the result? There are two main goals for doing this. One, of course, is that with the current global oil shortage, it provides countries with a new source of oil from Russia. You can buy it at market price, which helps stabilize, or at least try to stabilize, the fluctuations in the global crude oil market. The second goal is to prevent this oil from going to China so that China can't keep stockpiling oil. Of course, doing this, well, those are the two benefits. But what's the downside? The downside is that it lets Russia make money, right? So you see, Europe is definitely frowning at this. But the reason the US is willing to do it is because the US believes that the threat from the Chinese Communist Party is far greater than the threat from Russia. They'd rather see the CCP lose, even if Russia gains, as long as China takes the hit. This is the Trump administration's goal. They still want to bring Russia into their camp. But no matter what, even though today Putin is in Beijing, hugging Xi Jinping warmly, acting like brothers and all that, let's just wait and see, in a few months or maybe a year or two, whether Trump can actually pull off his consistent strategy and bring Russia over to the American side. All right, so that's what this move is all about. So even though at the Trump-Xi meeting, both sides were extremely courteous, calling each other good friends over and over again, what's the real situation after Trump leaves? Another thing is that yesterday, there was another tense aerial standoff in the southern airspace of Taiwan, but this time the confrontation was different from previous ones. Yesterday morning, around 9 a.m. Taiwan time, several Chinese military aircraft crossed the median line of the Taiwan Strait and continue to operate in the southwestern part of Taiwan's ADZ, that is, the Air Defense Identification Zone in the southwest. So, with activity in that area, the Taiwanese military sent out fighter jets to intercept. As a result, in the southwestern part of Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone, the two sides' aircraft were probably flying very close to each other. The Chinese military's fighter jets radioed the Taiwanese Air Force planes, saying, "Taiwan aircraft, this is the Chinese Naval Aviation. You are endangering my flight safety. Please keep a safe distance from me." Within just a few minutes, the Chinese pilot issued the same warning 3 times in a row. So what happened next? At that moment, the US military aircraft suddenly intervened and forcefully responded 9 times in a row over the radio in English. You know, the Chinese pilot said it 3 times, but the Americans said it 9 times. What did they say? They said, "This is a United States military aircraft. This is official," what's the formal term for this? In formal language, basically, I'm a US aircraft, a US military aircraft, conducting lawful military activities in international airspace. Please respect the rights protected by international law. I am a sovereign and independent US Navy aircraft. They repeated it 9 times in a row, basically forcing the Chinese side to back off. What does this tell us? It shows 2 things. First, it means that US military aircraft have been monitoring the area around the Taiwan Strait for a long time. If anything happens, it's not just Taiwan's planes. US aircraft will immediately get involved too. Of course, the main reason they're keeping such a close watch is not only to assert the right to fly over the airspace above the Taiwan Strait, but also because the Trump administration is monitoring PLA activities in real time, preparing to prevent the Chinese Communist Party from unilaterally crossing a line and escalating the situation. Second, if Taiwanese planes really do get bullied by the Chinese military, to put it plainly, it's like when a little brother runs into a thug, the big brother steps in to help. That's basically what it is. So this shows that the US military is deeply involved in the Taiwan Strait, trying to restore balance in the region, especially in the air. We all know that in the air, Chinese military aircraft and at sea, Chinese warships crossing the median line of the Taiwan Strait have already become the norm. Such incursions into Taiwan's airspace are now routine. If they keep pushing closer, Taiwan won't even dare to respond. If they turn a drill into a real attack and start fighting, it's indefensible. So it's pretty clear that the US is stepping in to push things back in the Taiwan Strait, right? Pushing them back, if you go and intimidate Taiwan's planes, then the US will come and intimidate you. How about that? So the actions and intentions here, the US military's involvement and their intentions are very obvious. They're trying to help balance the situation in the Taiwan Strait. There's also another big thing I want to talk to everyone about. I mentioned this yesterday, but only got halfway through. So about the Taiwan Strait. During the spring and autumn seasons, the weather is relatively calm, but during all the other times, well, it's either typhoon season with lots of typhoons, or it's the northeast monsoon. So during those times, the waves are often over 3 feet high, which makes cross-strait military operations very difficult. But from April to May, for about a month and a half in the spring, and in the fall, from mid-September to the end of October, the conditions are different. That's also about a month and a half, or 6 weeks, when the seas are calm. It's the golden window for cross-strait military operations. Back when Koxinga crossed the sea to attack Tainan, he also set out in April. So it's really spring and fall. That's the window for attacking Taiwan. So what happened? From April to May this year, the joint military exercises between the US and the Philippines kept getting bigger and bigger. Originally, there were less than 10,000 participants, only about 8,000, but now it's close to 20,000. It used to be just 2 countries, but now it's 4 or 5 countries. The US alone sent 10,000 troops. This year, there were over 17,000 participants, with a large number of US warships arriving, including test launches of Tomahawk missiles. The location of the exercises also changed. From what used to be US-Philippines drills in the southern and central parts of the Philippines, they've now moved to the Batanes Islands, north of Luzon. So what are the Batanes Islands and where are they? They're just 150 kilometers from Taiwan, only 150 kilometers, basically right at Taiwan's doorstep for this joint military exercise. This year, 5 countries participated. Besides the US and the Philippines, there was Japan, Australia, and who else? France also joined in. So France came all the way over. That's what happened in the spring. In the fall, where does it happen? In the fall, the US and Japan hold joint military exercises. In even-numbered years, like 2026, which is an even year, it's called Keen Sword. In odd-numbered years, it's called Keen Edge. So typically, when the US military participates in the Keen Sword exercise, the US sends between 10,000 and 15,000 troops, while Japan's self-defense forces deploy between 30,000 and 45,000 personnel. That's 3 times larger than the expanded US-Philippines joint exercises. And in this situation, it's a joint exercise involving the Navy, Army, and Air Force. So the US-Japan exercises are on a pretty large scale. What does this mean? Where are these exercises taking place? They're happening near Yonaguni Island, which is only 110 kilometers from Taiwan. So as you can see, during the prime times for a potential attack on Taiwan in the spring and fall, the US uses these military exercises to fully occupy these 2 areas. So on one side, you have the US and its allies on high alert, or just the US and Japan. They're warning against attacking Taiwan. The Pentagon has openly stated that this is exactly their intention. If you try to attack Taiwan in the spring or fall, our troops will be fully prepared, with live ammunition ready, and under the guise of exercises, they'll be watching you to make sure you can't use that window to attack Taiwan, to land on the island. That's the real picture of US-China relations, isn't it? Don't you all think so? All right, so I think after this Xi Jinping visit to China, after Trump's visit to China, everyone was worried about whether Trump would sell out Taiwan's friends. Is anyone still worried about that now? Yeah, I think talking is one thing, but what you actually do is something else. So when it comes to Trump, you have to look at him this way, and it's the same with Xi Jinping. It's not about what you say, it's about what you do. All right, now let's take a look at today's big news, Putin's visit to China. So what's really going on? Well, officially, it's that at the invitation of Chinese President Xi Jinping, Russian President Putin will be making a state visit to China from May 19th to 20th. Okay, that's the situation. So, of course, what we're seeing is that as soon as Trump leaves, Putin arrives, right? Trump was here for 5 days, and then Putin comes right after. Is Putin in a hurry or what? Is that why he's coming? Of course, the official explanation goes back to 2001. Putin and Jiang Zemin signed what's called the China-Russia Treaty of Good Neighborliness and Friendly Cooperation, which set the eastern section of the border between China and Russia. Basically, all those old unequal treaties from the Qing dynasty, the ones from the Manchu era, were all handled by the Chinese Communist Party. They officially recognized those borders as formal treaties. From then until now, it's been exactly 25 years since the signing. Also, in 1996, China and Russia established what's called a Strategic Partnership of Coordination, and it's now the 30th anniversary of that as well. So these agreements were also signed by Jiang Zemin and Yeltsin. Of course, the 2 agreements were signed on different dates, one in July and one in April. So when Putin comes here and says he's commemorating these 2 anniversaries, it's not really about the anniversaries because the dates don't actually match up. It's May right now. He's really just timing his visit to coincide with Trump so he doesn't get left behind. Why do I say this? Because right after the Victory Day parade in Moscow on May 9th, which Putin holds every year after World War II, he came here. But he immediately gave a speech saying that the Russia-China partnership is an important cornerstone of global stability. He was quick to show his stance to Xi Jinping, saying that their relationship is more important, or at least very important. Because right now, Russia really does rely heavily on the Chinese Communist Party's economic and military support to sustain its war in Ukraine. So Putin simply can't afford to lose this support. Before starting his visit to China today, before he even left, he gave a video speech in Moscow to once again express his intentions, saying that Russia and the Chinese Communist Party will support each other on a wide range of issues, including national unification and safeguarding sovereignty. Putin said that China-Russia relations have reached an unprecedented level of mutual understanding and trust, and added that he is prepared to have a face-to-face meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping on the 20th. Before that? All right, so what topics are expected to be discussed? One of the most prominent is a major natural gas pipeline called the Power of Siberia 2. Okay, so what exactly is this project, the Power of Siberia 2? Let's first talk about what the Power of Siberia 1 is. So what is the route of the Power of Siberia 1? It starts from the oil fields in eastern Siberia, Russia, heads south, passes through the three northeastern provinces of Heilongjiang, Jilin, and Liaoning, then goes to Hebei, and finally reaches Beijing. Okay, so it goes to the northeast region and finally connects to China's national natural gas network. Now, as for Power of Siberia 2, its route starts from the natural gas fields in western Siberia, mainly the Yamal area, the Yamal gas field. In the past, the associated natural gas from the Yamal gas field mainly went west, It was sent to Poland, to Germany, and to Eastern Europe. But now, Europe doesn't want it anymore. They're not buying it. This is just schizophrenic. On one hand, they're supporting Ukraine, and on the other, they still want to buy Russian natural gas. So what can you do? There are no customers now. So Putin hopes to build another natural gas pipeline called Power of Siberia 2. It would start from the Yamal oil field in western Siberia, and then originally it was supposed to go through, through the Altai Mountains and then enter Xinjiang, China, but the whole route is mountainous. The engineering difficulty is very high, so instead they chose to take a flat route, going across outer Mongolia, then into inner Mongolia, then to North China, and finally connecting to China's natural gas network. That's the situation. This Power of Siberia 2 pipeline can deliver 50 billion cubic meters of natural gas per year. So what does that mean? Is that a lot or a little?